A Hunter S. Thompson's Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas was first published in 2 consecutive issues of Rolling Stone magazine in 1971. It was published as a novel the following year. Artist Ralph Steadman illustrates this story about 2 buddies on a depraved road trip to Las Vegas, and his distinct artwork is almost as much a part of the legacy of this book as Thompson's words. The book is beloved for its depiction of gratuitous narcotics consumption, but it also provides some thoughtful commentary on a particular time in American society, when the counterculture movement of the 1960s began to fade away, and global politics and commercialization became more prominent under Thompson's nemesis, President Richard Nixon. While many readers begin and end their exploration of Thompson's writing with his most famous work, I tend to prefer his essays, and especially his political writing and reporting. I've amassed quite a little collection of his work over the years, and was especially enthusiastic about it in my early 20s. So much of what he wrote after Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas is beholden to the language and branding of that text, as evidenced by the titles of his other work. Here's a pocketbook edition of Fear and Loathing on the Campaign Trail 72. These are first editions of The Great Shark Hunt and Generation of Swine, and one of my favorites, Better Than Sex, Confessions of a Political Junkie, which tackles the Clinton presidency. Then we've got a trade paperback of The Proud Highway, The Fear and Loathing Letters, a hardcover edition of Fear and Loathing in America, a trade paperback of Kingdom of Fear, and the final book published in his lifetime, Hey Rube, which is a collection of his sports writing. Hunter S. Thompson popularized a style of writing called Gonzo journalism, which can blur fact with fiction, but really involves the writer's direct participation in the story they're covering. Readers can dedicate a lot of effort to trying to separate the fiction from the facts, but that might distract from the point. With works like the Rum Diaries and Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, it's effective to just treat them as fiction and enjoy the ride. In the Las Vegas book, we follow 2 characters, reporter Raoul Duke and his attorney friend Dr. Gonzo. Thompson employs a fairly straightforward structure where he has one of the 2 friends overindulging in substance abuse, teetering on the point of madness and collapse, while the other remains ever so slightly more grounded and tries to help navigate them through it. Then they switch places and the pattern repeats. Each of them has a distinct voice peppered with catchphrases, and the dialogue flows very well as Duke attempts to cover a motorcycle race and later a police convention. The influence and legacy of these characters continued long after the book's initial popularity. Thompson himself allegedly felt compelled to live up to the character he created, and his wild and animated behavior became the stuff of legend, though I wonder how much of it was a performance. Nonetheless, the character's influence can be seen in the inspirations and homages it spawned, from Uncle Duke in Doonesbury Comics to Spider Jerusalem in Transmetropolitan. The 1998 film adaptation of Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas was actually my first introduction to the character, and when I learned that it was first a well-known and beloved book, I sought that out to help me make sense of what I just watched. The first time I read this novel, it was from this Vintage Books edition. It's a trade edition from 1998 and is the movie tie-in version, which is often the least desirable version of a book among collectors. Despite featuring the film's promotional poster on the cover, I'm thankful that all of Ralph Steadman's art from the original edition is still present here. When I learned that the Folio Society would be releasing a hardcover illustrated version of this novel for its 50th anniversary, I was very excited and ordered it straight away. Finally, I could upgrade from this horrible thing and get my hands on a copy that was more befitting of a place of honor on my bookshelf. So let's do this. Here we have Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas from the Folio Society. Oh man, it's nice. This version was just released in the summer of 2022 and is presented in a black slipcase with Steadman's iconic lettering in an orange wraparound. The covering on the slipcase feels slightly rubbery to me. The lamination appears to be rather susceptible to fingerprints, so be sure to wipe it down if you've got greasy mitts like me. The front cover of the book is a lovely homage to the original cover, with a blocked reproduction of Steadman's artwork on orange cloth. The blocking wraps around the spine to the back cover where the cacti are in green foil, while the front title is in silver. On the spine, we note the title in black, with the creator names and folio logo in green foil. The binding is finished with a black headband. The application of the green appears thin and almost comes across as transparent, at least on my copy. As is often the case with the foil printing on cloth, take care when handling the book, as I believe it'll be more susceptible to early wear. But I can't deny that it looks great. When we crack the book open, we are met by black end papers with a neat metallic glitter. They're in a medium stock. The book is printed on Abbey Pure rough paper, which has a bit of a tooth to it and is very thick. Color swatches indicate that the paper isn't quite ultra white, but is instead a pale coffee tone. If we bring back the Vintage Books edition for a brief side-by-side, we can see that the Folio Society version is larger, with almost 4 centimeters more in height and 3 centimeters in width. The font size isn't any larger, but the higher quality paper and fantastic spacing do improve readability. The introduction is by David Mamet. He's a playwright, author, and filmmaker, and in this 6-page introduction, he writes about Hemingway and Twain and the issues around labeling authors and their work. He attempts to determine where Fear and Loathing should be placed on his bookshelf, wavering between reporting, fiction, dystopian fiction, and travelogue. The writing itself in this introduction is a touch more dry and academic than I was expecting, but I suppose that's the point, as it works as a counter to the frequently dismissive criticism Thompson's books receive. Ralph Steadman's original integrated artwork has been colored by Neil Gower. Steadman has illustrated Thompson a handful of times, and released a wonderful memoir about his co-collaborator in 2006 called The Joke's Over. Steadman has done a lot of other illustration work over his career, including images for Animal Farm and Alice in Wonderland. He has a distinct style characterized by a combination of intense details for the grotesque and expressive but precise loose lines for other elements, all finished off with his signature Steadman ink splatter effect. In this folio edition, his artwork is presented on the same paper as the text and is integrated throughout. For the coloring, Neil Gower uses masking and watercolor wash to accentuate the details of the original drawings, breathing new life into them without ever pulling away from them. Let's take a detailed look at the artwork now. The first illustration, the title page, is the original artwork from the cover of Rolling Stone issue 95, which is a fantastic addition because it wasn't included in my paperback copy. You can really see the phallic shape of the motorcycle, which I hadn't noticed before. Gower's touches of orange and yellow in the image are great because we see them a lot, and the original only employed red and blue ink. It's very cool to have this Ralph Steadman piece included within the book itself. The second piece is the same cover artwork from the original novel in a bold 2-page spread. The red line through the blue sky establishes movement. The splatter of orange and red are going to show up often in this color work. The trailing lines coming off the big red shark just add to the sense of speed, and the two characters are distorted with a skeletal Duke and a monstrous Dr. Gonzo. The heavy yellow flourishes on the desert floor add so much depth to the image. While this is an enlarged version of the cover image, you'll note that Duke and Gonzo have been flipped in terms of position. Then we get the title page to part 1 of the book. From behind, we see our characters leaving the desert and approaching the city. There is plenty of Steadman-esque color splatter, and the gentle brushwork through the city on the horizon, and a slight touch for the red shark, help emphasize key details of the illustration. Next is a drawing of the teenaged hitchhiker, with some heavy blue behind him to emphasize the wide open sky, and some orange to enhance the road he stands on, with that same orange color echoed above via splatter effect. On the typically smaller reproductions, I'd never noticed that he has a Nazi Nixon Mickey on his t-shirt. Steadman had a tendency to reuse parts of his illustrations, as we'll see in some upcoming images. Here again we have the cover image, this time in close-up, with a line of yellow and orange running through it, perhaps to suggest a division between the two occupants of the vehicle as tensions increase. Next, we see an angry police officer who is looking very military with a little touch of yellow in his hair and heavy pink skin tones to suggest either a sunburnt face or that he's flush with anger. There's a subtle blue splatter effect next to him in an attempt to bring more to this image, which is actually just a detail from a larger piece we'll see in part 2. The Lizard Lounge is the next double-page spread. There's some orange in the background that pulls our eye across the forms, but you'll notice that Neil Gower leaves the faces untouched, which invites us to view the details of their debauchery. The turquoise blue on either end of this row of creatures helps bookend them. This guy is biting this girl as she squawks in protest, and we will see this figure pulled out from this image and used again. The lizard lady from the previous page has no color application to her gown this time. Instead, the image features orange and blue splatter around her to help bring her full design more attention. This image is of the Circus dealer table. We have the dealer in the center, obscured by an overhead light, and the players around him. Above them, the circus shenanigans carry on. This illustration features a green wash with some pink splatter to create a gaudy tone. And here we've got the big-eyed gambler. This piece features 3 colors, a teal blue for his bow tie, his glasses are done in a brown, with green splatter hits of color across his face. That pairs up nicely with the next one of the cigar-smoking gambler. The color splatter is applied to his body, but the big bold hit of pink and yellow through the face is great. His expression and posture depict him as grumpy and frustrated at the dealer table. This is a full-page depiction of Dr. Gonzo in the bathtub. He's put green Japanese bath salts in the water, and the reflection effect on the oily surface is great. He's holding his Gerber hunting knife, and he's just been hit by a high-speed grapefruit, and he's freaking out. All types of chaos around his head, and this one highlights that monstrous element that Stedman likes to employ. This drawing may be my personal favorite of the bunch. I love the dynamic composition and details on this image of the lizard gambler. The head has been colored in pink with a quick streak of green through the body, and some splatter to bring some chaos to it. Check out his eye, we can see right through his head. One of the most iconic images from the book is of Duke attempting to tiptoe out of the Mint Hotel. The skin tones are only partially filled, while the Acapulco shirt is fully filled in. The light brush of blue through the legs helps emphasize the cartoonish tiptoe movement, with a little echo of that same color up here on the hat, and some splatter work on the bottom to suggest a shadow. This one truly highlights all of Neil Gower's coloring techniques. Here is the Part 2 title page. The color draws our attention to the gross image of Dr. Gonzo vomiting in the toilet as a member of the hotel cleaning staff looks on in horror. This double-page spread may be the least inspired of the color images in this edition. It depicts the police checking into the Flamingo Hotel. Some of them have very detailed, grotesque faces, and one of them should be familiar to us as this detail showed up in an earlier illustration. The splattered green along the bottom and the red along the top serve to emphasize how indistinguishable they all are, but it feels rushed compared to most of the other color applications in the book. In contrast, the color work here is very effective. Dr. Gonzo, who looks kinda like Nixon in this image, is giving Duke some advice as he appears to be gobbling pills. This is the first image with a dialogue balloon, and the purple, gray, and orange work really well, especially when they spill outside the panel border. This is another exciting one because it isn't featured in other copies of the novelization. It's the image from the cover of Rolling Stone issue 96. As the police are watching a film about drug users, 2 members of the audience begin making out in the dark, and Duke describes the grotesque savagery in their actions, which is depicted well by Stedman here. It looks like an attack. The yellow at the top and the red at the bottom help draw the eye around, but I can't help fixating on the really revolting details of this man's arm. One of the best uses of color can be found in this illustration, which spreads along the bottom third of these 2 pages. Duke and Gonzo pull up next to a car with 2 policemen and their wives. The speed of this little drag race can be seen in the lines and is emphasized with the color as the purple and blue streak by at the top, with a hint of yellow pulled through the middle of the image. The original black and white illustration was always hard for me to read, but the color work here helps clarify this visual for me. This illustration of a mad dog has been hit with a touch of yellow to enhance it. After that, we get the same image from the Part 2 title page, but with a different color treatment this time. Gonzo is vomiting while the maid looks on, but the Dr. Gonzo portion only has a touch of color to the vomit, while his body was boldly colored in the previous version. And the pea green rectangle around the maid makes this version much more about her reaction, which is a clever way to add a new perspective to a repeated piece of art. The final illustration is this curious decorative letter E, which is a take on the flourished fonts found in illustrated manuscripts. The nude figure reaching up is actually a detail lifted from the Circus dealer table illustration and is adorned with a red splatter effect here. In Part 2 of the original novelization, Stedman occasionally adorned pages with his distinct ink splatter. In this Folio edition, the black ink hasn't been used. Instead, they opt for color splatter. At first, it's just some light blue and red. Then some darker color is used. There's a lot more color variety to the splatter here. On this page, the splatter continues further down the page. And on the final page, they've added some to the bottom, which closes out the book. This 50th year anniversary edition of Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas is a top-tier Folio Society release. It's everything I'd want out of a deluxe edition. It has a decorated slipcase, a great cover that features an enhanced take on the original iconic cover. It's well built with Folio's typical great attention to detail and quality materials. It has a unique introduction, and the fact that they colored the artwork provides a new experience even for those who are intimately familiar with the original. With the addition of the artwork from the Rolling Stone covers, it's even better, because it now feels like a more complete collection of the material. With this beautiful book now on my shelf, I can finally get rid of my old movie tie-in paperback, so I can make more room for more great books. Perfect. As always, thanks for watching, and if you'd like more content, stay tuned to this channel or circle back to previous videos.